Assalamu alaikum and greetings everyone. I am Syed Ali Zia Jaffery, a research associate at the Center for Security Strategy and Policy Research. I will be moderating this first session of a very exciting workshop organized by Dr. Adab Sultan Strafacia, which aims to introduce students and young scholars with some of the most pressing security and foreign policy issues that not only affect Pakistan, but also the world at large. Today, I'm privileged and honored to be hosting my mentor, my inspiration, and my director, Dr. Rabia Akhtar. Dr. Rabia Akhtar is ideally suited to talk about Pak-US relations, its prospect and challenges in the times to come. I'll try to introduce her quickly because her bio is an elaborate one. Dr. Akhtar is the director of the Center for Security Strategy and Policy Research at the University of Lahore. She's also the founding director of the School of Integrated Social Sciences at the very university. She is an associate professor of international relations and politics at the School of Integrated Social Sciences. She obtained her PhD in strategic studies, in security studies, I beg your pardon, from the Kansas State University, United States of America. She has 2 masters in international relations and political science from Qaidazm University and Eastern Illinois University, respectively. She's a Fulbright alumna. She has written extensively on deterrence dynamics, nuclear security, strategy, with the prime focus on non-proliferation and the politics of proliferation in Pakistan and the United States of America. She is also the editor of Pakistan Politico, which happens to be Pakistan's first strategic and foreign affairs magazine. She was also a member of Prime Minister Imran Khan's Foreign Policy Advisory Council from December 2018 until April 2022. As of now, she's also a senior non-resident fellow at the Atlantic Council, Washington, D.C. As far as Pak-US relations are concerned, her academic work led to the publication of a book in 2018 entitled The Blind Eye US Non-Proliferation Policy Towards Pakistan from Ford to Clinton. It was, I must stress, based on archival research from 5 presidential libraries from Ford to Clinton. And this is the hook that will link with this discussion, because you cannot understand the future until and unless you don't have a cursory understanding of history. I'm not talking about advanced understanding, but you even need to have a cursory understanding of history and how history shapes and reshapes politics, strategy, and policy making when it comes to the relations between big powers and medium-sized powers. Over to you, Dr. Rabia. I would like you to speak for as long as you want to. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Ali, for this very, very kind introduction. You are one of my favorite mentees, and I'm really proud to see you flourish and make a name for yourself. Thank you so much for all the elaborate bits and pieces about Pak-US stuff that I worked on. I hope I'm audible, and please excuse me, everybody, if there is any background noise, because it's a building I've shifted in and there's a lot of work happening, and I've told them to hold their horses until I'm speaking. So fingers crossed for electricity and no background noise. There is an edited book that has come out just now by Routledge. It's edited by Ghulam Ali, and it carries a chapter on Pak-US relation, which I've written. And it carries a bit of history and some of the contemporary aspects of the relations. So I am going to be basing today's talk not only in the non-proliferation context, but also taking you chronologically through history to talk about the future. And in fact, we should have an interactive discussion on the future of Pak-US relations, and not just, me talking about it. I would love to, there's so much that is happening around this subject. So So I will start my clock to 45 minutes, and I might even end early, and we can take the Q&A after that. So just to do a survey of Pakistan-US relations and situate it in history, Pakistan in its early formative years, it did not have much to offer to the Americans in its early days. Unlike India, Pakistan had neither inherited strong infrastructure nor a strong military. And as per the early American calculations, Pakistan's location could only have provided them with a possible bomber base on the Soviet Union's southern flank, and that was it, nothing more. When the Cold War arrived in South Asia, India steered clear of the superpower rivalry in its initial years, while Pakistan showed enthusiasm for a pro-Western alignment. But unfortunately for Pakistan, its founder, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, did not live long enough to lay strong foundations for Pakistan's foreign policy, but he had actually visualized its direction. In his September 7, 1947 cabinet meeting, within the first month of Pakistan's independence, Jinnah had shared his views, and he had stated that Pakistan is a democracy and communism does not flourish in the soil of Islam. It is therefore in our interest, Pakistan's interest, it lies more with two great democratic countries like United Kingdom and United States rather than with Russia or Soviet Union at that time. Even though Pakistan's pro-Western leaning was discernible, it took some time to officially identify with the American camp. In the initial decades of the Cold War, major US foreign policy objectives in Asia were to gain influence in the region, forging economic and military alliances with free and friendly, like-minded governments in the region, and the development of their individual as well as collective ability to resist communist influences in the region and to gain access to resources for US markets in Asia. Now, in the first decade of their alliance, Pakistan allowed the United States to realize most of its objectives in the region and became America's bulwark in Asia against a Sino-Soviet communist influence. But the cracks in the alliance became visible after the end of their first decade. Events from 1962 onwards, as you all know, who have read history, reveal incompatibility in US and Pakistani alliance objectives and expectations from each other, leading to the first breakdown. Now, after Ayub Khan became the president of Pakistan, he sort of reoriented country's foreign policy and decided to develop friendly ties with China and the Soviet Union. I would definitely urge everybody to read his masterpiece, Friends Not Masters, in which he discussed at length Pakistan's security imperatives, demanding a change in Pakistan's foreign policy outlook. And to understand how the narrative took shape, it is important for us to know as to what he actually envisioned as the new outlook. Ayub wrote, and I quote Ayub, "Take the geographical location of Pakistan first. Here is East Pakistan surrounded on the sides, three sides by India. And the only approach is from the sea, which is not difficult for an enemy to control. West Pakistan is wedged in between three enormous powers, the Soviet Union at the top, China in the northeast, and India in the south and east. I know of no other small country," Ayub said, "which has the somewhat dubious distinction of having three such mighty neighbors. Now, this location is a source of weakness in physical terms, but it could be converted into a source of strength if we could establish normal and mutually acceptable relations with the countries hemming us in." This was Ayub's outlook for Pakistan. Now, with India, the prospects of good relations were not a possibility in the near term, given the dispute of Kashmir that all of you are familiar with. By joining SEATO and CENTO, Ayub argued early on that Pakistan had already alienated the Soviet Union, but was hopeful that it was possible to come to an understanding with the Soviet Union by removing her doubts and misgivings, and that the design was never actually to harm the Soviet Union, since Pakistan's membership to both SEATO and CENTO was dictated only by the requirements of Pakistan's security. This change in Ayub's thinking about accommodating the Soviets It resulted from the U-2, the famous U-2 incident, and the subsequent Soviet threats to Pakistan. Pakistan also saw China as an emerging power that wanted friendly neighbors, and all Pakistan had to do to get on her side was to convince her of Pakistan's sincerity and friendly intent. Now, given that friendly relations with India were more problematic than building friendly relations with the two communist countries in Pakistan's immediate neighborhood, Ayub Khan at that time early on felt that if we could not establish normal relations with all the three big neighbors, the best thing was to have an understanding with two of them. They might have their internal differences, but we did not need to get involved in that. Ayub said this was a vital element to our new thinking, to keep clear of the internal disputes and conflicts of other countries, neither to philosophize about their problems nor to act as busybodies. It was on the basis that he set out to normalize relations with China and Soviet Union. And this, we forget, as part of our history, was our earlier orientation of Pakistan's foreign policy towards Soviet Union and China, while it was an alliance relationship with the United States. The problem, however, remained that in order to boost Pakistan's economy, initial capital investments needed to be made. And only one country was capable of making such incredible economic investment in Pakistan, and it was no other than the United States. So while Ayub understood that given the Cold War ideological confrontations, establishing bilateral with China, Soviet Union, and United States would be an arduous task, he nevertheless, thought that Pakistan needed to do that. Now, the United States, time and time again, reminded Pakistan of its treaty commitments, which only allowed for a US response to a communist aggression against Pakistan, but not an Indian aggression. And that's where the India card, comes in. Ayub and Bhutto, both of them remained dismissive of the treaty stipulations. In short term, the Tashkent Declaration achieved its objectives, but the essence of Bhutto's statement to Ambassador McConaughey about US desertion of its ally, and this I'm talking in terms of 1965 war, led to US arms embargo on Pakistan. And it was seen as the first betrayal by the United States when United States did not come to help Pakistan against Indian aggression in 1965. Now, Pakistan's foreign policy tone with the United States basically found its anchor in the US arms embargo on Pakistan after 65 war with India, and it strengthened over time with the 1971 breakup of Pakistan after the United States failed to meet Pakistan's expectations as an ally during that time period. Giving its dependency on the US for both the economic assistance and military assistance, Pakistan had no choice but to reconcile its differences with the United States. In addition to Bhutto's friendly overtures, two US policies helped smoothen previous anxieties in Pakistan-US relations. Number one was President Nixon's rapprochement with China and Pakistan's role in facilitating the opening between the two countries. And second was Nixon's decision of resumption of military sales to both Pakistan and India. So in this backdrop, from 1974 to 1998, Pakistan relentlessly pursued nuclear weapons development, and it ultimately tested in 1998. The US non-proliferation legislation, and there's a free e-copy of my book available, and which details these non-proliferation legislations, they constrained US foreign policy choices towards Pakistan from 1976 onwards. After the first non-proliferation legislation, which was the Symington Amendment, was enacted, as per US law, Pakistan was sanctioned for its proliferation behavior under different administration. So Pakistan is a unique case, popularly known, and you must have read, is the most sanctioned ally of the United States, where in almost all cases, with the exception of one, when Pakistan tested its nuclear weapons in 1998, the US unilaterally imposed economic, political, and military sanctions at different periods in their alliance relationship to deter Pakistan's proliferation behavior. The result, as we know, is negative. Pakistan's narrative, I want you to understand, that developed during this time period maintained that #1 US policy selectively targeted Pakistan for non-proliferation in South Asia because it didn't treat India the same way. And secondly, the US policy was uneven in its approach and sanctioned only Pakistan when the country was no longer needed to achieve US foreign policy objective. We fast forward to post 9/11, when the United States needed Pakistan to join its war against terrorism. Once again, sanctions were lifted to enlist Pakistan's support in Afghanistan. And once again, Pakistan and United States found themselves in a situation similar to that of late 70s and early 80s, willing to accommodate each other to align their national interest. And little did Pakistan know at that time that its involvement in US-led operations in Afghanistan, which began in 2001, will bring the war home to Pakistan, taking lives of its citizens and soldiers alike. Now, fast forward again to 2021, in what was perhaps the most swiftest and unexpected ending in the history of wars, Taliban's peaceful and non-violent blitzkrieg on their way to taking over Kabul on August 15, 2021, has left military historians baffled and the international community stunned. The future of Afghanistan is uncertain. However, Pakistan's foreign policy interests in Afghanistan are shaped in the long term by the investments it has made in bringing all stakeholders together to ensure that peace and stability return to Afghanistan. Pakistan's biggest foreign policy challenge, I believe, in coming decade, and we can have more discussion in a Q&A session, will be to manage its alliances and partnerships with two major powers, China and the United States. In a post-COVID world and the manner in which regional and global security situation is changing, it is much likely that coming years will see increased competition and conflict instead of competition and cooperation between the two powers, especially with respect to how these two powers tailor their partnership. And Islamabad's is one important partnership for both China and the US. Now, after Afghanistan and China, the third critical foreign policy challenge for Pakistan-US relations is the growing Indo-US strategic partnership, part of which is anchored in the Sino-US strategic rivalry, of which India is one component. Now, while the United States appears to be grooming India to challenge China in the Indo-Pacific region, Pakistan, I believe, is the collateral damage and is at the downward end of what India stands to gain from its strategic as well as defense partnership with the US. If US continues to be the highest exporter of arms in the world, and India takes the second slot as the world's highest arms importer, then strategic stability in South Asia, which is already fragile between the three nuclear armed states sharing disputed borders with each other, will only become more precarious. Pakistan-US conversation, therefore, I believe, needs to address this aspect of US responsibility in its contribution to the fragility of overall deterrence and strategic instability in South Asia.
Probably there's a power outage at her office, so maybe we could wait for a couple of minutes. I don't think it will take more than
Okay, right. Okay, Ali bhai, right.
I would request of everybody to turn off their mics and only turn them on if and when I ask you to raise your questions. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes, you are audible. Please continue.
So lastly, I'm at the last part of it. The light went and it just came. So where do we go from here? You know, Pakistan, I believe, wants to have a fresh prologue as it enters a new era of Pakistan-US relations under the Biden administration. The anchors for this new foreign policy direction are economic security and connectivity, building developmental partnerships for Pakistan with those in the region and extended neighborhood. But if this foreign policy is devoid of Pakistan's reading of what the geostrategic compulsions are for the US and South Asia and vice versa, then I believe the dividends will not be realized by either country. The historical survey of Pakistan-US relation, which I've just, mentioned in a very short time, has several convergences and divergences, that have developed over the length of this relationship. The story of foreign aid and economic relations, which has been the hallmark of Pak-US relations for several decades in 1970s and 80s, have found periods of mutual reliance on each other, giving rise to narratives that were specific to each country. We once again have landed where there is a negative narrative that is surrounding Pak-US relations. And, we can have more discussion about it. Lastly, contemporary challenges in bilateral foreign policy relations are not entirely different than those Pak-US faced during the Cold War decades. Pakistan is bringing many ghosts from the past to this current relationship. India is central to Pakistan's foreign policy alignments, and so is Afghanistan, and so is China. The new conversation perhaps only centers around Pakistan's management of its relationship with the US and China, as it makes economic security a central pillar of its foreign policy, as enshrined in Pakistan's national security policy released earlier this year. Now, the good thing is that the conversation is happening and that there is enough space to discuss each other's expectations and deliverances, given the rich history of their shared past, which allows them to learn from what worked for both. And I believe that if Pakistan plays its cards right, and without compromising on its core national security and foreign policy interests, this relationship will survive the rough waters, since history tells us that it has the potential to come back with much bigger than before. Past will definitely be the prologue for this uneasy and essential relationship, but will only set the context if the right lessons are learned from history from both sides, in both the United States and Pakistan. Ali, I would like to end here. And, it was a very fast rundown of the 75 years that we are about to mark next month. But I'd be happy to take questions, and I think we should have an interactive discussion.
Thank you very much for giving such a quick snapshot of the 75-year relations between the two countries, which have seen their ups and downs. And I wish we were taught history in schools the way you have gone through it, and not with dates and when was Akbar born and when was Babur born. Although I enjoy memorizing dates, but that's besides the point. I think you raised a very important point at the end, that this relation is very essential, and we must look back at history. While reading history is very important, it is also important to correctly read history, and also not to be selective in picking and plucking out portions from and of history and suiting it to project your own narrative. So that also needs to be taken into account. And I also believe that while relations have to be improved bilaterally, we cannot dissociate bilateral levers from the environments in and around the region, and also from the global context. So I think you've set the stage for a very interactive discussion. Now I would like to open please
convert Ethernet for a second. Just give me a second. Let me convert to Ethernet.
So in the meanwhile, please raise your hands for the Q&A, and what we'll do, Dr. Rabia, is that we'll raise your hands. I will take one question at a time. So one question will be answered, and then we'll move to the next. So Dr. Rabia, I'll be taking one question and you will answer one question, and then we'll move to the next. So it would be one by one. So I would like to ask Sikandar to open his video and open his mic and ask the question. Please keep your questions crisp, and avoid making comments because we don't have much time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali, and thank you, Dr. Rabia, for this wonderful insight that you have provided on Pakistan and US relation. My question is, ma'am, do you agree that Pakistan's role in Afghanistan jihad against Soviet Union was the root cause of terrorism in Pakistan? Or is it the reaction of US invasion of Afghanistan after 9/11, Pakistan's U-turn in Afghanistan policy? Thank you.
Thank you, Sikandar.
Do you want to take a couple questions, or do you want?
No, I think you can answer this and then we can take another question.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Sikandar. So, you know, hindsight is 2020, right? So if you now look back to all the decisions Pakistan made in order to fight other people's wars, you would definitely find faults in it. But at the time Pakistan was taking that decision, it was, you know, the period of 79, say, until, you know, the entire decade from 79 onwards. Pakistan looked at its own national interest at that time and decided that the kind of economic and military assistance it was to receive from the United States was in the best national interest of Pakistan at that time. I'm not saying I've not seen the declassified documents from Pakistan's side enough to know as whether Pakistan did the cost benefit analysis of as to what's going to happen once the Soviets will actually leave. But I would like to believe that our leaders at that time would have done those calculations, would have thought as to what would the consequences be. After the Soviets left the region and the US left the region, we have seen the creation of the Taliban. We have seen the trained mujahideen that were left without a cause, and the kind of infighting that began in Afghanistan at the end of the Cold War. So all of these, once you stand now and you look back, you see, it shouldn't have happened. But then again, look at as to what was in Pakistan's national interest at that time. Your question is that, whether it was the root cause of terrorism. I believe that the decision of 9/11, post 9/11, joining US war against terrorism, that was a period where probably not enough time Pakistan had at its hand to do the cost benefit analysis because of the kind of threats Pakistan had received from the US, that Pakistan had to be quick in its decision making. And all the leaders that have come ever since then, blame President Musharraf for taking a decision. But if they put themselves in Musharraf's shoes, I'm sure they would not arrive at a decision which was dissimilar or an alternative at that point in time, because Pakistan was not negotiating from a position of strength. That, yes, led to terrorism inside Pakistan. I don't think that the terrorism problem in Pakistan refers back to 40 years back. But yes, post 9/11, definitely Pakistan has suffered. The creation of Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan and the kind of havoc that it has played with Pakistani citizens and security forces alike over a period of these 20 years will make you realize that probably that decision was a wrong decision. The rest, I'm sure you also have an opinion about it, which I would like to hear at some point. Thank you.
Thank you for the crisp question and a very crisp answer. Yes, indeed, it's hindsight is always 2020. We cannot actually, the problem with history is that we cannot recreate events. So that's one of the hindrances that historians like you have faced and will face whenever you do historical research. And this is why archives are very important. And maybe at the end, you could share your thoughts on how to start with archival research, because that's very important. And I know that you are leading this charge of Pakistan being more open when it comes to sources and declassification and all these things, because we need to have our own intellectual capital and our own intellectual response, and that cannot come absent our ability and our willingness to open ourselves to the world. So now I would like to ask Murad Ali to open his mic and video and ask a question. Thank you.
First of all, thank you so much, Ali and Dr. Rabia, for giving such detailed and brief presentations on the area. My question is regarding to the possibility of a rapprochement between US and Pakistan relationships on the positions of Pakistan's or through the interest or through the perspective of Pakistan. Don't you think that the most despicable or unbearable point in relationship between the US and India is this defense tie between US and India? Like United States is basically funneling India with the defense equipment, which has had an overriding or a counter effect on the strategic stability in South Asia. And Pakistan also showed a different avenue, alternative, by cobbling up with Russia and opening a new corridor with China and other part against the US interests or against the wills or the interest of the US. My question is, don't you think that the only way for rapprochement between US and Pakistan is that US must need to deharmonize its foreign policy toward Pakistan and India by not casting one over another? Like US has to back out some of the most taunting points of its defense style, like for instance, its nuclear, giving India as positions in the nuclear supplier group or Australian groups, this and that, which has a very like a negative impact on the strategic stability in South Asia. So my point is, keeping in view the importance of Pakistan.
Thank you, Murad. We have understood your question, and Dr. Rabia will answer it. Thank you.
Thank you, Murad. I think it's an interesting question because everybody, you know, who looks at Pakistan-US relations and Pakistan-India relations try and look at these relations as, you know, a zero sum. And I would suggest that as students of IR, you know, we need to be more pragmatic. And if we are more pragmatic, going to understand, like I said in the opening, what is it that United States gets from India in this region? And what is it that Pakistan cannot give United States what it gets from India in this region? So if Pakistan understands that it has shortfalls, Pakistan understands that it does not have the economic clout to counter, you know, the economic clout and influence the kind India has, which United States can use against China, then you would understand that what India gives to United States, Pakistan can never give. So these two needs to be looked at separately. And I always say this, that, you know, we watch a lot of Bollywood movies and we believe that United States is some kind of a hero, and, you know, with two heroines like Pakistan and India. And if the hero leaves one, it goes to the other, and the former one is annoyed as to, you know, it's not a love triangle. These are not human relationships. These are state relations. And state relations are entirely based on national interest. Now, there have been periods in Pak-US history where our national interests have aligned and we have worked like a well-oiled machine. And now there are periods in time in history and contemporary era where Indian and US strategic interests align. And yes, it does hurt Pakistan. Yes, Pakistan has its own threat perceptions, but to believe that, you know, Pakistan should make United States realize that its threat perceptions need to be configured in its alliance relationship with India, Pakistan does not have that position of strength right now. I will take you back to the 1960s, in fact, 50s, 1954 Mutual Assistance Treaty was signed. America was giving arms and ammunition and weapons to both India and Pakistan. And at that time, it was very well aware that these weapons are going to be used against each other and not against the Chinese communists, but against each other. Yet it continued to supply. And that time, Pakistan was perfectly fine with receiving those weapons. And it is at this point in time when now it is singularly strategically aligned with India, Pakistan has a problem with US national interest. So I think we need to, you talked about dehyphenation. United States is already dehyphenated. What it has with India does not, it does not have with Pakistan. It is not tied with Pakistan. So there is a very clear dehyphenation as to what it wants from India, what it wants from Pakistan. Pakistan just needs to try and build up its economy so that it reaches a position of strength where it is needed by powers like the United States, rather than just sitting and cribbing and thinking that, why is it going to India? It is going to India because India is offering it what Pakistan cannot offer. So it is going to prop up India because it has a threat that it wants to neutralize in shape of China. So it's a very clear, scenario in which United States national interests at this point in time are not aligned with Pakistan, but they are aligned with with India. And Pakistan needs to understand that this alignment, as long as Sino-strategic rivalry is continuing, this alignment is not going anywhere. And in order to for Pakistan to find any relevance in United States strategic calculus, it needs to stop bringing in India into the equation and build up its own singularly, rather than, saying it that it's a mutually exclusive zone where, United States has to balance. I don't think United States as a superpower has to balance anybody or has to care for anybody's threat perceptions. Pakistan needs to take charge. Pakistan needs to formulate its own and set its own house in order so that the United States realizes that it has relevance. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Murad, for a good question. And thank you very much, Dr. Rabia, for answering it very comprehensively. The takeaway from your answer is that Pakistan's future is in the hands of only Pakistan. One of the things that we do not realize when discussing international relations related events is that there are no emotions in global politics. It's perfectly fine for the United States to, so to speak, ditch us, because that's how global politics is. It's ruthless, and it follows a very realistic, not realism, but a very realistic frame of thought and frame of mind, where when your interests are aligned, you are pals, and when your interests are not aligned, you turn the other way. And as you alluded to Muhammad Ayub Khan's remark about using your location as as an asset rather than letting it be a liability, that all depends only on Pakistan and on Pakistanis, like the people sitting in this meeting. The future is in our own hands. It's for us to make it, or it's on us to break it. So my next, I would like to ask Imran Abbas to open his video and mic. And before asking a question, please introduce yourself and your affiliation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Thank you. So my question, rather there are more than one question.
Please introduce yourself. Can you introduce
I am
yourself?
Imran Abbas. I'm Imran Abbas. I am assistant professor in the Department of Politics and International Relations, University of Sargodha. So my question to Dr. Rabia is about the dynamic that is going to be played out within Pakistan and America relationship. Dr. Rabia, do you think that this unprecedented dichotomy of that has somehow emerged in Pakistani politics about the people perception of foreign policy and assertiveness of the masses over Pak-US relationship as of recently, will it be playing an intervening variable between Pakistan and US for a future relationship, or is it just fancy to say that this is just a phenomena which has bubbled out in the recent politics and will be no more in contextual?
Do you have a second question as well?
Yeah, I have actually, but if there are other dynamics which I wanted to bring in.
Okay.
Please ask, if you can ask quickly. the
Sure,
second
thank you,
question.
thank you. So what about the bipartisanism in American politics? Will it be contextual to relationship with Pakistan, or US will try to look it from the very systematic approach or systemic approach of taking China into account and then thinking of the Pakistan's potential role vis-a-vis US interests? And there could be another dynamic, if I'm allowed.
Sure, go
Yes,
ahead.
just a minute.
Okay, sorry for taking so much time. So when we are thinking of India-centric approach, thinking of India's US relationship, while US is actually putting it out of the context of India-Pakistan relationship in a South Asian context, it's rather US-India relation and US-Pakistan relation independently. Can we move towards a more US-Pakistan relationship instead of US-India relationship as more of our concern?
All right, thank you so much, Imran. So to answer your first question, so yes, this current dynamics that you have pointed out, where the people of Pakistan have sort of absorbed this narrative that United States is involved in bringing a regime change, is going to have long-term effects on Pak-US relations. And I don't see this as a short-term phenomenon. I think it will have direct bearing on how United States is going to conduct public diplomacy in Pakistan. Because, when country conducts public diplomacy, it has to take public into account. And for example, just give you an example of US aid. US aid has a huge budget. You have US Educational Foundation, which runs a Fulbright program. So all of these programs that United States has in Pakistan has public at the end, on the receiving end. And if the public somehow unites as a nation and says that, no, we are going to, let's say, boycott US goods, US products, until United States, comes around and stops interfering in Pakistani domestic politics, stops thinking of regime change, stops working with the establishment, and just sticks to developmental work, or provide Pakistan economic military assistance, irrespective of what the political dynamics are, then definitely United States has to change its ways and would be definitely thinking as to how its public diplomacy efforts could be effective. So yes, this dynamic is very much in play now, especially when there is an awakening and people are questioning the role of United States. The US, on the other hand, is also worried about public diplomacy and larger public diplomacy. So this is here to stay. And I think this has sort of, this is not just an intervening variable. This is going to be a variable which is going to affect as to how US will conduct public diplomacy going forward from here onwards. So that was an important point that you brought on. Bipartisan approach, so United States over a period of years, has taken certain agenda points. So for example, when there was non-proliferation, there was bipartisan support on sanctioning on Pakistan, because across the board, everybody thought across party lines that non-proliferation was an objective and that was to be achieved. And so everybody was sold on the idea of Pakistan proliferating, and therefore these legislations were passed, the non-proliferation legislations that led to sanctioning. But over a period of years, if you take Trump out of this context, because Trump, everybody says, was an anomaly. Trump phenomena is not going to be repeated ever again. we have been told by various sources in US history, because they have learned their own lessons, then you would say that there have been Democrats and there have been Republicans. And whenever there have been convergences, you can't really say that Republicans have favored or Democrats have favored, although that's the common perception. But from my reading, it is all about alignment of national interest. If there is a Republican Party and they need Pakistan for something, they're going to come around. If there is a Democratic Party in power, if the national interests are aligned, they're not going to think whatever was happening over a period of years and forget about that and come and, work with Pakistan. So that's that. Bipartisanship is agenda centric, and it is, in that context that Pakistan, becomes relevant and irrelevant. It is not Republicans or Democrats that set that tone. With respect to India-centric approach, I have been saying, and I continue to say, that we need to ignore India. We seriously, if for next 5 years, let's say, if Pakistan, in its political conversations with the United States, does not bring India up, or Pakistan's comparison with India, or what United States is doing with India that has implications for Pakistan, trust me, if we stop talking about India for 5 years, we will gain respect, not only from the United States, but from other partners as well. You have seen as to how, at the height of Galwan Valley clashes and Ladakh skirmishes, the bilateral trade between China and India was on an all-time high. All right. So I'm not saying that, Pakistan should, start trade with India minus everything else that is happening between at the bilateral level. All I'm saying is that in our conversations with the United States, let's focus on Pakistan. Let's focus on what Pakistan can offer, not what Pakistan can offer in comparison to what India is offering the United States. I think that conversation needs to be changed. Pakistan wants to become an economic hub. Is a transit country, has economic potential, wants economic muscle, wants regional connectivity, and that has got nothing to do with India. That's got everything to do with Pakistan. So why don't we focus on the pluses and we manage our threat perceptions, whichever way we feel we can, but let's not bring India into our conversations with US, into our conversations with Afghanistan, into our conversations with China, Central Asia, Turkey, Iran. Let's forget about India and let's just do it for 5 years, and you will see that we will emerge with a fresher perspective and a newer self-confidence, which is not anchored in looking over our shoulders and seeing what India is getting and what Pakistan is not getting. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this set of questions and obviously the answers. And I think the most important point that you raised, Dr. Rabia, was that let's forget about India. I think the previous question talked about dehyphenation. So I think by unnecessarily focusing on India too much, we ourselves contribute towards hyphenating the relationship, which is something which is a known goal. And if we only look at our policy options through the Indian lens, we are limiting our own choices. So we should not venture into Africa because India is venturing into Africa. We should venture into Africa because it is for the interest of the 220 million people of Pakistan. So we should look for our own interests and benefits. We should not link our. I know you have raised many points about Pakistan needing to de-link its nuclear diplomacy from India, and that has plagued our efforts in that regard as well. So I think this is something that is very important to understand, that India, we should forget about India for a while and we should focus on our own house, and that needs to be set right. Now I would like to ask Fazal Ilahi Bilal to introduce himself and ask a question. Open your mic, Fazal.
Thank you, Mr. Ali. I'm Fazal Bilal from King Edward Medical University and PhD scholar of University of Lahore. In the backdrop of US-Pak relation based on aids and sanction, respected madam, my question is that US desire to cultivate good ties with the new Pakistani government while also urging them to use it leverage with the Taliban to fulfill the international commitment demand. Prima facie make it evident that the scope of bilateral relation is security centric. Kindly enlighten all of us with your learned opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Bilal.
Thank you, Bilal. So, Pakistan-US relationship, as you mentioned, and as I mentioned in my opening remarks, has been a relationship of aid and sanctions. Pakistan's geopolitical location, geostrategic location is both a curse and a blessing for it. And when I quoted Friends, Not Masters, please do read that book. You would realize that over a period of years, Pakistan has not been able to sell itself well with respect to what leverage it can accrue from its relationships, not only that of the US, but also other countries surrounding it. Yes, Pakistan has the relationship has been security centric, but it does not mean that it comes at a cost of developing an economic centric relationship. If the United States had been looking at Pakistan to bring Taliban to the table, Afghan Taliban to the table, it was Pakistan that made the US realize that they are an important stakeholder. And while they went into fighting a war with them post 9/11, it is now the time to realize them and understand that they are the main stakeholders and they need to have a seat on the table. So I think Pakistan, over a period of years has not been given enough acknowledgement for this fact that, whatever leverage it had over the Taliban, it used to bring them to the table. So if I understand your question correctly, it's not really a thing. It is not really that Pak-US relations are not a mutually exclusive zone where security can exist and economic relations cannot exist. And when economic relations exist, security relations cannot exist. They can go hand in hand. And like I said, it is about alignment of national interest. And if at one point in time, your national interests are aligned on the economic front, fair enough. If on the other, couple of years down the road, if it aligned on the security side of the things, fair enough. You take whatever it is that the relationship is giving you, rather than, not setting the terms of engagement. I think Pakistan, once it gets an economic backbone, needs to set its own terms of engagement with the United States. And again, it is not a zero sum. It shouldn't be. No relationship should be a zero sum because, all state relations are transactional in nature. You keep reading this statement everywhere, every book, every article you pick on Pak-US says Pak-US relationship is a transactional relationship. And I ask you a question that you name me one relationship in this world, interstate relationship between countries, which is not transactional. There is no love lost between countries. There is no love lost between Pakistan and the US. Again, it is based on national interest, whether they be security, whether they be economic, whether they be political. So Pakistan needs to, set its own terms of engagement with the US. Thank you.
Thank you. As a cricket buff, I always, relate IR with cricket and identify one difference is that international relations is not like street cricket. It's very much possible for one of the countries you're engaging with to engage with you and your friends simultaneously. In street cricket, it does not happen. If somebody has given you out incorrectly, your friend will not talk. Your friend will not talk to him. So this is now not how it goes. And the other point that I know you don't like the word transactional, and this is important. Every relation, be it strategic or tactical in nature, is about transactions. Strategic transactions are bigger in nature, they are more impactful, and they look at the longer term impacts of a particular transaction. And tactical are, very short sighted, and they are event-based in nature. Now I would like to ask Mohammed Usman to open his mic, introduce himself, and ask his question. Thank you.
Thank you. I am Mohammed Usman Kareem from NDU. I am doing BS in International Relations. Ma'am, as you have discussed that we should learn from the history, and we should, and the current Sino-US competition is somewhat similar to the Cold War period. So what should be our policy in this situation? Should we go for and keep the policy of non-alignment in the Sino-US conflict, keeping the history and the lessons learned from the Cold War in our mind? And secondly, what is that common point on which US and Pakistan can further maintain their relations after the withdrawal of US from Afghanistan? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Usman. So I think all Pakistan, non-alignment is not the word. I think we live in a world where some sort of alignment is happening, whether you like it or not, whether it goes to your favor or not. All Pakistan needs to do is balance its relationships. Pakistan needs to balance its relations with China. Pakistan needs to balance its relations with United States. And again, like I said, it shouldn't be zero sum. It shouldn't be that if we are aligned with China on several issues, then there is no space for alignment with the United States simultaneously. I think there is enough room, given these two relationships that Pakistan has, and given their rich history, that both can exist simultaneously and they do not need to clash. Pakistan has offered, United States to come and join CPEC, special economic zones, and make investments there. Nothing stops United States from coming forth and helping Pakistan with those investments. Even if it is a China-Pakistan economic corridor, special economic zone. So I think there is enough room, given the economic relations and the kind of stability that Pakistan wants in the region, the kind of transit hub, regional connectivity that it wants in the region, that, it is in the benefit of the US as well to stabilize Pakistan by making investments, and also China. So it's all about balancing. It is not about bandwagoning anymore, if you're a student of IIA. I think Pakistan has the capacity to balance its relations. It is just that it is afraid most of the time that, if you're going to reach out to one, the other is going to be, annoyed. And again, like I said, we need to get rid of this Bollywood prism and rose-colored glasses that we have on all the time, trying to define our relationships, one at the behest of the other. They both are special relationships, and Pakistan needs both. Pakistan needs to nurture both. And trust me, historically, at the height of its relations with the United States during the 80s, Pakistan had a strategic relationship with China. And that tells you that both relationships can be managed, because it's all about leadership. It's all about balancing. It's all about having a strategic vision and making sure that your national interests are aligned somehow or the other. And Pakistan hasn't changed. US hasn't changed. China hasn't changed. All we need is a strategic vision that can unite Pakistan's causes together, and then simultaneously pass them to whosoever can fulfill them. That's what I believe. Again, on convergences, like I said, if you've read the national security policy, it's really important that Pakistan realizes its economic potential. And now the conversation needs to only be about as to how can Pakistan gain its economic muscle, as to how can Pakistan, what type of investment is needed in Pakistan in order for it to stand on its 2 feet. What kind of, a role Pakistan can play in bringing safety, security, and stability in Afghanistan, because Pakistan is still very much relevant. Pakistan can become a transit hub if there is stability in Afghanistan. And I think United States, like Pakistan played a role in bringing Taliban to the table, I believe that Pakistan still has a role in bringing major powers together, in ensuring that Afghanistan sees the kind of peace and security and stability that is in turn going to benefit Pakistan. So it's all about a strategic vision in which, Afghanistan has a role, Central Asia has a role, Iran has a role, Turkey has a role, China has a role, and US has a role. And you bring all of them together and you ignore India for 5 years, and I think you'll be fine. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question and the answer. I think as our former National Security Advisor Moeed Yusuf, in one of his interviews last year, said that Pakistan should become a melting pot and it should provide economic bases rather than military bases to other powers. And I think we have what it takes to do that. We just need to, as you said, have a vision. And also, it's not something that we've not done before. The current state of Sino-US relations, the relations were developed because of Pakistan providing the much needed opening to Henry Kissinger and Richard Nixon in 1970-71. So we have done this before, and we can do this do this again. But all we need to do is we need to keep the interest of the Pakistani public at our heart, and this is what leadership has to do at the end of the day. So
Yeah,
I will.
one thing, Ali, just to clarify, I hope we don't become an emotional melting pot.
Absolutely. If we become an emotional melting pot, that would be game over, unfortunately. Okay, now I would like to ask Jamal to open his mic, video, introduce himself, and ask his question.
My name is Jamal Nasir. I am retired military officer. Madam, thanks for enlightening us on this topic. Really, Pakistan-US relations are complex, and it is rightly said these are like a marriage of inconvenience. Having said, I have a question that as a part of team of foreign policy of previous government, do you think that hype of this routine communique is a prudent approach? And when we say that an Undersecretary Donald Lu was able to dislodge a sitting prime minister of a nuclear state, is this a prudent? Is this not undermining capabilities of Pakistani security forces, Pakistan's undermining of Pakistan right? My second question is that until now, we have observed that Pakistan-US relations are based on security needs. Had these relations between people to people or these would have been based on economic ties, today we would have been observing better state. Can you please answer these questions?
Thank you so much, Jamal Saab. I believe all marriages are marriages of inconvenience, but that's just my personal opinion. With respect to whether it's prudent for the US to do one thing or the other, with respect to the current scenario that we've been facing, I would simply state that I have not seen the cipher, which has been deciphered. I have not seen it, but I do believe that such communication is not something which is out of the norm. There are throughout history and some of the documents, declassified documents I have seen and read in US archives, US presidential archives, where much more harsher language has been used between US diplomats and Pakistani diplomats. Heated arguments have been exchanged and which have been documented. So I don't think that this is the first time something like this has happened. It is just the only thing that has happened is that it has now made it to mainstream media. And this kind of a conversation has been made public. I am no judge of whether this is prudent or not, because had I not seen previous documentation, I would have said that this is something new, but this is not something new. Countries send demarches, diplomats, foreign officers send demarches to each other all the time. If something that has been said by the other party, which you like, you call the ambassador and you send a demarche. And I think these are the norm. I am also not going to make a connection, absence evidence that Liu played a part in regime change. That is speculation at this point in time, because since I'm a student of history, until and unless I see evidence, I am going to refrain from speculating. Yes, it has created a bad taste because of the narrative that has been generated and has been bought by Pakistani public as such, without demanding to see the evidence. Now, I'm not saying that those who have seen the evidence are lying. I'm not saying that those who have seen the evidence are trying to give it a twist, because I myself, as an academic, need to look at the evidence before making up my mind. So I am going to, simply say that I am apolitical in this scenario. I'm not going to take one side or the other, because I have not read the document. I haven't seen the document. All I've seen, like an ordinary citizen of Pakistan, as to how it has played in the public view. Again, not a judgment for me to make whether regime change has actually happened based on this cipher document that's been cited all over. Coming to your second question, Pakistan and US have had, over a period of years, very strong people-to-people ties. And one of the biggest evidence of it is the Fulbright program, which is the largest funded Fulbright program anywhere in the world. When I was in the US on a Fulbright program, I was there for 5 years, received 5 years of funding, as opposed to any other country in which a PhD Fulbright program is run. Only 1 year or maximum 2 years of funding is given by the Fulbright. But for Pakistani students, maximum 5 years of PhD funding is given. That has been one successful people-to-people contact, because a lot of us came back with a renewed understanding of as to, we are not going to be emotional about Pakistan-US relations, rather find ways where the convergences can be and play our part in bringing the two people together of these two great nations. So I would suggest that has happened. And over a period of years, again, there has been immense public diplomacy that US has been doing. Had that not been the case, you would have not seen the symbols of American freedom, the symbols that define America, quite rampant in Pakistan. You see, I was part of the 2011 protests against America, and I was covering it as a fixer for some of the foreign correspondents. And everywhere we went to cover those protests, we saw people in, wearing Adidas, Nike shoes, shirts, drinking Coke, wearing PCAPs, slogans written on their shirts about America. And without even understanding the context, they were not there as haters of America or what America stands for. They hated American foreign policy choices. So there is a difference. I would urge all of you who are sitting here, or if you have ever traveled to the US, the people-to-people relations between United States and Pakistan is at a very much different level as compared to the kind of foreign policy choices that US has made, and Pakistanis have had an issue with that. And we are well within our rights to criticize those policies. And similarly, US is well within its rights to criticize Pakistani policies or our end of it. I think we are the ones who need to find the balance. Economic ties have been really strong. If you have been following, the kind of economic assistance United States has provided Pakistan over a period of years, you would realize that yes, while it was anchored in some of the security interests or the leverages Pakistan had or could provide US at that time, a lot of economic assistance came to Pakistan. The projects that USAID does in Pakistan are for some of the developmental purposes. So I personally, and today too, you would see people lining up to get US visa. And it is not that they hate America. It is that they hate US policies. And there is a difference between the two. And once we talk about it, we shouldn't just generalize America or lump it together as a whole, because there are layers and layers. And as academics, as experts, as practitioners, we should be able to delineate as to what are the issues rather than lumping in them in one big US bubble. So I hope some of it answers your question, but we can have more debate on it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. I think, yes, we have good people-to-people relations, because there's a lot to relate between an average Pakistani and an average American. One of the things that you pointed out rightly is the Fulbright program. People have benefited from the program, and then that benefit has helped Pakistan in some ways or the other. So I think to completely denigrate the performance or the relations outrightly is not correct, and we need to strike a balance. And also, this common thing on Twitter that, oh, you are wearing a Nike t-shirt, yet you are criticizing Lou for it. It does not cut it. You can definitely criticize Donald or anybody else while wearing a Nike t-shirt. So we have two questions left. I would like Jawad to open his mic, introduce himself, and ask his question. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. I have a brief question. As a matter of significant historic moment in 1970s, Pakistan helped the United States to reach out China. So my question is, can Pakistan play the similar role in 21st century to bring the two superpowers together?
I think it's an excellent question. And that's something, Jawad, which is, heartening to see that you're thinking about the positives that Pakistan can bring to the relationship. Yes, over a period of years, Pakistan has played, mediatory role, not only with respect to Pak-US relations, but also with other countries which have had hostile relations. And if Pakistan could do it once, Pakistan could do it again. But it is at this point in time, this juncture, the interest needs to come from the United States or China. They are the ones who need to see as to whether their interests are going to be aligned, whether they want cooperation or whether they want competition. And at this point in time of history where we are, their strategic trajectories, the power relations, their influence in the world is not at a plane where convergences could happen and that they would come to Pakistan and Pakistan would say that yes, or Pakistan would initiate. Pakistan does not have that position of strength at this point in time. Like I said again, I truly believe that Pakistan needs to shut itself for 5 years and say we're not available. We're not available for anybody. We just want to set our own house in order. And if you can help us, very well. And if you cannot, please leave us alone. So if we do that for 5 years, rather than, playing more than our role, I think Pakistan doesn't have the muscle to do it right now. Pakistan also, United States came to Pakistan because of an opening that it wanted. Not that Pakistan wanted that to happen. So that strategic alignment needs to happen between United States and China. And then if they need interlocutors like Pakistan, then Pakistan should be open to that idea of bridging the gap. At this point, this idea emanating from Pakistan is not welcomed by anybody because they're head-to-head in a strategic competition. But what Pakistan has been signaling to the US is that China-Pakistan economic corridor is not a zero-sum. And that is one area in which Pakistan has been clearly telling the United States that if you come and invest in the special economic zones, it's beneficial for all three countries. So that's what Pakistan can do at this point in time. And Pakistan is doing very well. I don't think there's anything more Pakistan can do, and it won't be welcome anyway. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question and obviously the answer. I think the more we try to set our own house in order, the more negotiating power we will have, because negotiations are only improved when you have the muscle to sit on the table. And I think if we focus on our own, on addressing our own fault lines, we'll have that muscle.
So I'm just going to step in for a minute. I think Ali's power went out and he asked me to step in if that happened. I hope I'm audible. So the next question, Dr. Rabia, is by Alina Afzal. Alina, could you please unmute and put your question to Dr. Rabia?
Yes, thank you. My name is Alina and I'm a student of BSIR at Air University, Islamabad. My question is related to the leadership in Pakistan and the sort of inferiority complex that it's a victim of. How do you think Pakistan can sort of step out of this phase and fix its the paths that it has to take in order to fulfill its vision? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really like the word inferiority complex here, because I do believe we suffer from it because we don't realize our own potential. Because all throughout history, we have been told that we're a smaller country and that we have been a victim of use and abuse by bigger powers. And nobody has told you that even though you are a small country, you have played against the superpowers in the past 75 years so remarkably that you really do not need the victim card in order to justify your policies or foreign policies for that matter. So I believe that it takes a leader. It also takes a historical narrative that needs to be set right. And I have immense hope from the next generation who are going to see Pakistan's true potential, ask the right questions, and look at Pakistan, what it has achieved over a period of years, despite all odds, despite being pushed against, in a hostile neighborhood, in a country 10 times its size, with zero resources it started, and look at what it has achieved. It has become a nuclear weapon state. At the height of its alliance with the United States, it developed nuclear weapons. It was a threshold nuclear weapons. Who does that? Where else are you going to find a country with an example of being the most sanctioned country, yet surviving? There is just no other example. And you know what, my friends, my academic friends, non-proliferation domain, take Pakistan out of the group and says Pakistan is an outlier. And so we're not going to talk about Pakistan. And then we're going to talk about the entire set of countries against which the United States has had successes. And I tell them, no, you need to put Pakistan back into the group, then need to do your analysis and assessment, because that's where you will see the strength Pakistan has had in, reversing the tides in its own favor. It has been an incredible feat. And why do we need to play victim? At the end of the Cold War, when the United States sanctioned Pakistan, the Pressler sanctions, I would urge you to read the history that I had the privilege of reading it from US archives. It was phenomenal, the way Pakistan pulled, Pakistan was not crying. Pakistan knew President Amendment was coming. Ghulam Haq was sent a letter. Ghulam Haq said, God, we are ready for it. But who in history, in Pakistan's side of the history, has told you? Everybody tells you that Pakistan was crying. because Pakistan has F-16s where 28 F-16s were confiscated. Of course, they were confiscated. That was a move that was below the belts. But Pakistan survived. Pakistan survived at every juncture of history where the entire world wanted it to fail. You tell me, is that not a resilience nation, a resilient nation, a story of resilience, a story that we need to take pride in rather than feel inferior about? I think Pakistan has so much potential, and it has baffled, Pulwama, Balakot, for example. The entire literature, you students of IR strategic history, the entire literature written on nuclear Pakistan says that Pakistan is smaller. Pakistan has nuclear weapons because it wants to thwart the conventional and the nuclear war. And Pakistan will be the first one to go early on in the crisis using the N card. And what happened? Pakistan surprised the entire world by making proportional responses, by releasing the pilot, by doing everything by the book. And the literature couldn't predict that behavior. And Pakistan did it. Squarely, crisis termination rested with Pakistan in Pulwama, Balakot. And if we ourselves are not going to acknowledge it, and we'll continue to wait for an acknowledgement that's going to come from the West, then you can continue to wait for other 75 years. I think it is about time that we start taking pride in whatever foreign policy choices we have made and try and find positives in it and tell it to our next generation so that we stop, crying our hearts out for being used and being abused by the powers and they will left us high and dry. None of that happened. We played them like they played us, and we did it more superbly than any other country in this world. So it's about time to get rid of this, inferiority complex. Thank you.
Absolutely, inferiority complex don't look good for great nations, and Pakistan is a great nation, and it will develop and prosper going forward, inshallah. So you raised this point about acknowledgement, and so at the back blurb of your book, you have written that it's an academic acknowledgement of Pakistan's brilliant negotiations and maneuvering skills. And you also said that Pakistan got more than what it had bargained for. I think yes, we truly lack in knowledge production, and unfortunately, people outside of Pakistan are writing about things that we should be writing about. And we should not let anybody else control our narrative. If people from outside of Pakistan write about Pakistan using other sources, the enemy would never be kind to you. The enemy. So we should keep the narrative in our hands. We have Ahmed Ali, who presented a stupendous paper at our conference, which concluded yesterday. He has a question. Please, Ahmed, open your mic, introduce yourself, and ask your question.
Thank you, Sir Ali. My name is Ahmed Ali, and I am a final year undergraduate student of Strategic Studies at National Defense University. I have a question that, as it has been already highlighted in newly released National Security Policy document, that Pakistan won't become part of camp politics, although it has been discussed in this session earlier. But I want to know from Ma'am Rabia that how do you think that Pakistan can achieve this objective, keeping in view the Pakistan's relationship with China and at the same time history between Pakistan and the US? Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmed, and thank you so much for being a part of our international conference. So you tell me, at what point in our history has the US ever told us that we can't talk to China? And at what point in our history has China ever told Pakistan that we cannot talk to the US? Neither of these two countries have ever told Pakistan that if Pakistan wants to maintain a relationship with one or the other, it has to let the other go. Never. There is no document out there that's going to state that. There is no evidence of such, exclusive relationship request has ever been made to Pakistan by either China or United States. You tell me, China is on the rise economically. Some of my friends say that China has already risen, which is true. And China wants a peaceful neighborhood. And if Pakistan's invitation to United States to invest in Pakistan's China-Pakistan economic corridor can help assuage some of the, heightened fears between United States and US, then it is for the benefit of everybody. Like I said earlier, Pakistan just needs to balance its relationship. Nobody is asking Pakistan to leave one country and hold on to the other. Not the US, not China. So Pakistan can balance it. And that's what camp politics means. I started with the early Cold War years. Pakistan did not have the wherewithal to even stand on its 2 feet. And therefore, Pakistan chose the side of the United States, our early, Jinnah, Liaquat Ali Khan, and then, Ayub Khan, when, first initial decade of Pakistan's presence in this world determined that the direction it needed to take. And at that time, United States was in a position to give Pakistan the economic and the military assistance to survive in a hostile environment it had just been born in. And so our national security demanded that tilt at that time. But in these present circumstances, when Pakistan is a nuclear weapon state, when Pakistan has a very robust conventional military setup, and it can take care of its territorial bounds, it continues to remain a sovereign country. All it needs to do is now, use both United States and China to its benefit. Take whatever it can take, whatever it has to leverage from the United States, and take whatever China is offering, and take the best of the both worlds. And the best of the both worlds do not need to cross. And that's all that Pakistan needs to understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmed, for the question, and thank you, Dr. Rabia, for the answer. On this, I would say that IMF never tells us to come knocking at its door all the time. We have been in an IMF program for 22 times. So nobody tells us to, knock the doors of an organization for taking loans and for, getting aid. So it ultimately depends upon us, and we should pluck out whatever we can from whatever country that benefits us. If Russia is benefiting Pakistan with a gas pipeline or cheap oil, Pakistan must take the plunge and take that offer. And if the Americans are offering us something very lucrative and it benefits our people, we must go for it. If there are any other questions, please raise your hands. And if there are no questions, we can quickly get the concluding thoughts from Dr. Rabia and end this session. If there are any other questions, please raise your hand.
There is Imran Abbas. His hand is raised. And I think Sam Abbas also raised his hand, but I don't see that anymore.
Okay. Imran has asked 3 questions, but if he has another question, we might. Okay, Imran, please ask your question.
Take Hesam Abbas' question first, and then Imran.
Okay. Please, Hesam, please open your mic and ask your questions, but introduce yourself first.
Hello, assalamu alaikum. My name is Mohammad Hassan Abbas, and I'm a student of BS. I'm doing my BS in Strategic Studies from the National Defense University in Pakistan. Madam, thank you for this wonderful, talk. I would like to ask that, you said that Pakistan should go towards neutrality and Pakistan should always, see what's best for Pakistan. But my question is, when Pakistan opted for neutrality during the, Russia-Ukraine crisis, when the war was going on, Pakistan faced severe pressure from the United States. And which eventually led to the situation that is currently we're facing. So why is it that when Pakistan always tries to pursue its interest, there is a sort of bitter sentiment towards the United States, and it always sort of backfires on us?
Thank you. I don't think that that was the entire context in which, US got annoyed that Pakistan wasn't taking sides. There are obviously so many variables to that. India also did that. Why do you think United States was not equally annoyed with India? Because it is in a strategic relationship with India and it needs India at all costs. With Pakistan, it doesn't have that type of a need at this point in time. So obviously it came down strong. Again, neutrality always doesn't come at a cost. If you remember, Imran Khan during his time decided not to take sides in Yemen crisis. And that didn't come at a cost. Pakistan survived that. Our relations with Saudi Arabia did not break down. So it's not always that. And again, when you look at relations between countries, don't just look at what the obvious is, but also look at some of the other variables that are confounding at that time. Obviously, you cannot see them up front. That's why they are confounding variables. But there are many different layers. Had Pakistan had the kind of strategic relationship with the US, the kind that India has, I'm sure United States would not have had an issue. Because Pakistan does not have a spine, because Pakistan is in the type of an economic crisis in which it has been going back to the US. So US had the leverage. US had the upper hand to twist. So if you give a country an upper hand to twist and you are at the rock bottom, what do you expect? You don't have a spine to fight with that. So, and that's how politics works at the IR level, at the interstate level.
Thank you. The take home from this answer is that foreign policy strength can only be garnered through internal strength. And if you're internally weak, if your economy is weak, if your societal indicators are weak, and if your fault lines are not being addressed, there's only so much that you can do in the foreign policy realm. And this is why we see Jay Shankar talking in the face of the European, telling them off that European problems are not our problems. And this is why we are unable to, at some levels, do the same. So we have Abdul Wase Ajmal, who has raised his hands. Can you please open your video mic and introduce yourself, ask your question? Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
So I'll just keep my question brief. My question is again on the concept of neutrality. A lot of the literature that is coming out of international politics today is studying the next 10 years and the next 20 years of the United States-China conflict, and it's trying to anticipate and it's trying to understand where this conflict will go. International politics, as part of my humble opinion, is all about hedging your bets correctly, as to how you hedge your bets correctly in foreign policy decisions regarding geopolitical events. Considering our close relationship with China and the way China has invested, and taking into account our very strong relationship with them and our investments with them, which simply go beyond the economic and military domain as well. There's also a strong cultural tie. There's a tie between the people as well. Do you think that neutrality at this point in time is really an effective option? Because it may really sound nice, but again, as I suggested before, it's all about hedging your bets. So do you think that if we try to remain in that neutral domain, considering our economic situation, considering that we don't have the hardcore quote-unquote resources to actually enable that thing that India can do? It has the forex reserves, it has the power, it has that capability to adopt some level of neutrality. Do you think that in this context for Pakistan, neutrality is an effective option? Thank you.
Thank you. So I asked you a question, Abdul Wasi. Is there an alternative to IMF and World Bank in this world?
Not yet, no, yes.
Okay. So until and unless there is a Chinese IMF and there is a World Bank led by China, Pakistan simply cannot afford to hedge its bets and choose one camp over the other. And like I said previously, China wants stability in the region, and that stability needs to come from stability in the larger neighborhood Pakistan is situated in. It has made huge investments in Pakistan and equally huge investments in Iran. And it does not want confrontation with the United States. And if Pakistan plays a balanced role, it ultimately is going to benefit the United States and China's rise. It's going to, align with China's rise and its goals if Pakistan, remains neutral and does not choose a side. United States does fear that, if it does not balance its relations with Pakistan, then Pakistan is going to tip over into the Chinese camp. But I think Pakistan has been successfully signaling for the past couple of years that there is no camp. It is not deciding one camp over the other. It does not want to play bloc politics. It cannot leave the United States because of its dependency on IMF, World Bank, economic assistance. And there is only so much economic assistance that China can provide. It cannot parallel, the kind of accommodations IMF, money and reliance Pakistan has on IMF over a period of years. And unless that happens, Pakistan does not have a choice of one over the other. So I believe that neutrality absolutely is a choice that Pakistan needs to make, because that is the need of the hour, and not just, saying willy-nilly. I think Pakistan needs to clear very, very clearly that it is not going to play camp politics. It needs both. It needs several countries in the neighborhood in order to survive. And, I think Pakistan is doing very well on that end, has been doing so for the past couple of years.
Thank you again for this question and the answer. Yes, I think camp politics would reduce Pakistan's freedom of action, and this is what Pakistan can ill afford. And that only means that we maintain good relations with all the camps. And going in a camp means that you are dependent on the camp leader. And this Pakistan, as a nuclear weapon state, as a country that is in many ways thriving, cannot and must not do. Now, I would like Faraz to open his mic, his video, and ask his question. And Faraz, I must say, is a rising star in this field. He's a very bright student who is part of Traphasia and a university.
Thank you so much, Ali Bhai, for giving the opportunity to ask the question. My question is in terms of, Dr. Rabia, how much do you think is the US's foreign policy stances in South Asia in general and Pakistan in particular, how much of that is based on the US president? Like, is it more of just a large institutional understanding in the US where their stance will remain the same regardless of the president, or is it dependent upon the individual in the chair? Thank you.
Thank you so much. A survey of history would tell you that Pakistan has constantly remained a foreign policy issue for the United States. There have been periods when they have not been able to understand where we've been coming from. And so you see the terminology of double game being used. But thankfully, it is not in the hands of the president to make a foreign policy towards any one country. It is not leadership-centric. It is also not party-centric. It is not a Republican foreign policy or Democrat foreign policy. There are lobbies, there is State Department that looks at the interest, there's Pentagon that looks at security, economic interests as well. Military assistance needs to go to who, and what are some of the national security objectives. And the national security establishment in the United States determines the relevance of that country at that particular point in time. The United States is one country that has been making policies for like 50 years ahead. And in those 50 years, countries like Pakistan have given them many surprises. There have been national intelligence estimates about Pakistan that have simply astounded them, because we thought one thing and then we flipped and, we did the other thing. So they have had their shared experience of learning from their side of the US relations with Pakistan. We keep crying about Pak-US relations. Trust me, they also keep crying about US-Pak relations. But yeah, there is a national security establishment, a lot of research, a lot of, very wise insights goes into that from the academics, from experts, from practitioners, and they have a foresight about a region and about countries, and then they advise the president or a particular party to develop party lines, about a particular country. So, but it is not the president that makes the policies towards any one country.
Thank you, Faraz, and thank you, Dr. Rabia. And for that, I in the first half of the chat box, I listed down like 7 books which are necessary reads for Pak-US relations, and I also gave the link to your book. And what Faraz asked and what one of the other participants asked early on about US internal political dynamics, I think a larger chunk of your book, like 75-80% of your book, is on the internal parleys that were taking place between the administrations across the time period you covered and the people at the Hill. So I think that will give both Faraz and the other participant a good overview and an insight on how the US political elites have looked at foreign policy issues as well as Pakistan-related issues specifically. So we have 2 quick questions, one again by Mr. Imran Abbas and one by Amir Hamza. We could take the 2 together and then you can answer both. So Imran Saab, please ask your question, but keep it short.
Thank you very much. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. So ideally, we want not an Indian-centric policy towards US, or India should not be on the negotiating table when we are negotiating with the US, but then talk about the threat proximity and the emergence of the new warfare technologies that has actually tipping the balance in favor of India. So will it be wise to remain out of Indian context, or it should be a necessity to negotiate with Americans that look, whatever your actions are putting us into a position that we have no other options but to switch back to the lowering down the threshold of the nuclear deterrence? That's the issue that is being presented as case of the security context of Pakistan or threat perception within Pakistan.
Thank you. Hamza, please ask your question quickly.
Good evening. My question is Russia really a red line between Pakistan and US relations, given the camp politics and managing the good relations with all the major powers?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wow. So India, to put it really, really bluntly, United States really does not care at this point in time as to what and how Pakistan feels about US-India relations and kind of strategic benefits India is accruing from that relationship. It really does not care. It is very, very singly focused on checking assertiveness of China. And for that, it deeply, genuinely believes that India has a role to play. Because over a period of years, India has situated itself in United States strategic calculus to make them believe that they can deliver on the China threat. So United States really does not care as to, whether it tips the scales in the Indian favor with respect to the Indo-US strategic partnership really doesn't matter to them. So if we make that as a selling point, and we say that, look, whatever you're doing is benefiting India, and it's hampering our threat perceptions, and so we don't have anything else to do but to lower our nuclear threshold and see we can use nuclear weapons. If that comes, that is a really, really bad pitch for Pakistan, because it's going to say, it's going to tell the rest of the world that, listen, Pakistan does not have the kind of confidence it takes to be a nuclear weapon state and to make decisions that are in the strategic benefit of Pakistan. Lowering the nuclear threshold and appearing to be vulnerable is not a good look for Pakistan. So I would definitely advise against that. We need to work on our strengths, and we need to exactly play it like we played it in Pulwama Balakot crisis, and appear to be in total control of as to how we respond to India conventionally, rather than resorting to lowering of nuclear threshold and threatening and signaling with nuclear weapons in any future crisis. Now, with respect to emerging technologies and kind of benefits that India stands to get, now India has the economic muscle to buy. I mentioned that it is the second largest arms importer because it has the money. If Pakistan had the money, Pakistan would also be buying stuff to balance and tip the scales in its favor. But Pakistan, unfortunately, does not have it. So I don't think the pitch to US should be that stop benefiting India strategically because it threatens us. The United States is aware of our threat perceptions. All we need to do is safeguard our own and put our own house in order, and probably find a strategic partner in China, which we already have. Find a strategic partner in Turkey, which we already have, and work with those relationships and try and gain some sort of parity, even if not full parity, some sort of parity that is going to give us the sense of confidence that we have got what it takes. But I don't think so pitching the same as you have phrased it to the US is the way to go. Hamza, just to answer briefly, I don't think any country is a red line. Once again, you need to be in the position of strength enough to remain relevant in another country's strategic calculus. And at this point in time, fortunately, Pakistan neither has the economic muscle nor the strategic benefits that United States can gain from a Pak-US relation, enough for Pakistan to say that we don't care what you think about Russia. So Pakistan again needs to draw a very fine line, find a very fine balance as to how it manages its relationships, and Pak-Russia relationship, Pak-China relationship, Pak-US relationship, Pak-Turkey, Pak-Iran, Pak-Central Asia, Pak-Afghanistan are some of those relationships that Pakistan needs to manage, because all of them are fragile. And for that, Pakistan needs to have strategic vision. Pakistan needs to have the leadership to get Pakistan on the right path so that its foreign policy choices don't come back to bite them. Thank you.
Wow, this was wide-ranging and it covered everything. We only had to talk about the future of Pak-US relations, but we ventured into so much. And thank you very much for all the great questions that you asked. I think this gives us a lot of hope that the future of Pakistan's foreign policy and strategic community is but bright. And I think the discussion was very nuanced, and we need discussions like this frequently. And I must thank Dr. Adil for providing this platform to all of us to share our thoughts. And learning is always mutual. In this session, I learned a lot from your presentation, Dr. Rabia, and from the questions that came your way. And I'm sure the students must have benefited a lot. Before we end this session, I would just like Dr. Rabia for you to give a word of advice to all these young scholars and students about research and about how they can create their impressions and leave a mark in the field of academia or whatever they do in their lives going forward.
Thank you so much, Ali, for brilliantly moderating the session. Thank you so much, everybody. Really enjoyed all the questions. I don't know if I was able to answer, but I tried to the best of my abilities. And thank you, Staff Asia, for providing this wonderful platform. I would just simply say that, you need to have confidence in the subject that you're pursuing. And if the subject that you're pursuing is Pakistan, then you need to have confidence in Pakistan. And for that, you need to read history, because the kind of restricted spaces in which Pakistan has maneuvered its ship to reach this point in history, this point in time, has been an incredible feat. And until and unless you know history, you're not going to give any credit to Pakistan. You're not going to give any credit to any of the leaders that have come before this leadership to give Pakistan the feat that it has today. So firstly, have confidence. And secondly, ask questions, because there is no naive question. But then again, just don't have the lens of black and white. There are a lot of gray zones that countries have to maneuver through, a lot of back channel that happens. And it is not that if you are my friend, you can't be friend of the other country. Again, don't look at interstate relations through a human lens. It is based on national interest. And if your national interest aligns with the enemy, trust me, that relationship is going to transform. So have a wider lens, ask questions, deconstruct arguments, and come up with your own theoretical constructs of as to how do you envision the next 75 years of Pakistan. And trust me, there is no one lens. Pakistan is unpredictable. Pakistan's geography is not going to change. So there are some of the constants that are there, but then there are new variables all the time. So experiment with those variables and come up with some analysis and say that, this is how Pakistan is going to look in the next 75 years if it learns the right lessons from history. So like a student of history and I are myself, every now and then these questions come up, and it's always useful to ask questions, have debates, but you need to be confident. You need to be confident that we have come so far as a country, take pride in it, and, just tell the world that, there is just no stopping Pakistan. And write, because if you bring in the written word, if you're in the literature, trust me, the written word is going to be read by everybody. So find avenues to write, find avenues to research, and never let your sense of wonder and curiosity fade away. Thank you so much, everybody, once again.
Thank you very much for this, for ending your talk with a very positive note. And curiosity should always remain. It should never die down. And I would add despondency, hopelessness is a sin. And we should never be hopeless. We should always look for a promising future. Tomorrow should be better than today. And the one thing that we all must tell ourselves is that we have to take charge of our own destiny. And only we can shape, make, and break our own destinies. Nobody else would come and hold our hand and make us cross the river and cross the bridge. It's only upon people like you and I that Pakistan can go forward, and inshallah it will go forward. Thank you very much, Dr. Rabia. I know you have a very busy and tight schedule. We would like to end here. I would like the participants to remain in the session because Madam Aiza has to announce some other housekeeping rules and has to pass on some information. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you another time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, Dr. Rabia. Thank you, Ali, so much.
Thank you.